So today we're back on Anime Expeditions, and we're going to be focusing on a meta unit who secretly got nerfed. And this nerf, along with some other testing that I did, has kind of led to some changes on my tier list today. So I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you do, maybe if you like or subscribe. But anyways, let's get into it. Yuta got nerfed this patch. And I didn't know that when I was making my tier list video, so I am going to have some changes to my tier list in this video. This is pretty much going to be a purely informational video. So first up with Yuta, what did they do to him, what did they nerf? Because there is a balance patch coming soon. This is unrelated to that balance patch, okay? This was like part of update 0.5. Something changed about Yuta, I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but if you saw my tournament video where I used Yuta in it, you might remember a strat with Kenpachi to get 2 Yutas maxed out on 1 unit. So you wait for the Yuta to have 2 out of 3 on his attacks, and then you wait a few seconds after that and you place down your other Yuta and instantly max him out. So this used to like infinitely cycle the follow-up attacks, full AoE stuff on your Yutas, right? But if you watch this Yuta right here, it looks like they made the cooldown longer. And I'm not entirely sure why. There used to be about like a 10-second cooldown from Yuta copying the same unit. And of course there was a method that I showed to kind of like bypass that, get around it, and pretty much have 2 maxed out Yutas perfectly follow-up attacking off of 1 unit. Something this update made that no longer possible. I think they made the cooldown longer, and so that is going to affect my tier list a little bit today. I'm going to make some changes to my tier list video. But I also did a lot of testing with other units which I want to talk about in this video. So yeah, pretty much an informational video, and we're going to start off by getting into the changes to the tier list now. So we're only touching these 3 categories of my last tier list, everything else is pretty much the exact same. But first up, the top 5, okay? With Yuta getting nerfed, and no longer able to have 2 maxed out Yutas follow up on the same unit, aka like abusing Kenpachi, I don't think Yuta's top 5 anymore. I think he is definitely surpassed by Dark Mage, so Dark Mage coming up here. And Yuta still is like a really good, cost-effective, cost-efficient DPS support. If you pair him with like, you have Unbound Puppet, Unbound Kenpachi, Unbound Freerin, you know, really good damage statistics for Yuta, he is still really good. But I do think, because you can't place 2 Yutas on the same unit anymore, he is less of a damage buffer to 1 unit than these guys are. He's not going to increase your DPS by over like 30% anymore. So unfortunately, Yuta got moved down quite a bit. I do think as a byproduct of Yuta being nerfed, Kenpachi value is kind of dropping. This unit paired with Yuta was like the craziest thing ever. You pretty much have a Yuta every 10 seconds doing 75k damage, not to mention his own personal DPS not even being that bad. But with Yuta kind of declining from the nerfs, we're going to also move down Kenpachi. And after some further testing with this unit, I do think his DPS also isn't that insane, especially because I think previously I was overvaluing his DPS in the Berserk form, because realistically he doesn't have the Berserk form all that often, so his DPS isn't actually like always that high. I do think Kenpachi is probably DPS number 3. And between Dark Mage and Megumi, okay, here's where it's kind of interesting. I did a lot of testing with these guys. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the spreadsheet of the testing I did so far. But this is the tier list, I would say. Like, this is kind of how it looks in my opinion for the meta now. So my bad for being a little inaccurate with the first tier list I dropped to the update, okay? Let me actually show you guys my new testing now. So I went ahead and tested Megumi and Judar in pretty much every game mode. This was done in my free time off camera. Well, I originally recorded it all, but I don't know, it was like way too much storage for me. And I wasn't going to be able to put it all in a video, so you're gonna have to trust me that I have no reason to lie about these numbers, and this was my actual research in my own time. These units did have the same exact build, they had the Shinigami sword and magic books on them, and the results for pretty much everything, including the JJK map Infinite, were actually in favor of Judar. So I don't know if it's maybe poor execution on my part with the Megumi runs, or maybe it's crit luck on some of them, but I think it's pretty obvious that Judar consistently had faster clears than Megumi. And I think realistically Judar probably could go further in the Infinite, because the problem I ran into was because I was testing these units completely solo, Judar in his lightning mode like couldn't break shields, and I'd have to kind of make him attack shields, and then that would also kind of make him eventually have to cycle out of lightning mode and get it back. So do take these clear times with a grain of salt. These are not like realistic portrayals of how these guys would perform in like actual teams. I ran these guys completely solo, with some relics and then a farm with them as well. For the most part, the clear times were pretty similar across the board. Besides the first mastery stage, because Megumi really struggles with shield breaking. His attack animation is only a 3 multi-hit, whereas Judar's is like a 4 or 5. Judar was doing better than Megumi, so gotta give that unit more credit. I definitely was dismissing the real value of his DPS being so consistent with good AoE coverage. But I also did some boss tests, okay, and these were different. These are actually pretty interesting. So as far as single target DPS went, Megumi definitely outperformed Judar. This was with fully maxed out builds on both of them in sandbox mode. And as you can see here, I maxed out Megumi, put everything on first, no Shadow Realm. Then for Judar, let him attack 7 times on strongest during his lightning. So on like the 50 boss one, for example, after all 50 bosses spawned, I put him on strongest for 7 attacks. You know, I really tried to get as much DPS output of these units as I could. And the results of the boss test you should take with a grain of salt. Of course, there's probably a little bit of human error and some crit luck in the clear times. Like for example, I think Megumi hit more crits on the 25 enemy test because he cleared it faster. But for the most part, it is pretty clear that Megumi is better for single target DPS. Like, he beat Judar by quite a bit of time. And this was with Judar attacking 7 times during his lightning form. Once again, this was like the maximum DPS output of these two besides Shadow Realm. But then for the 50 tanky enemies, you can see that clearly Judar did a lot better. Just because of the way that his DPS is distributed, he has much better AoE coverage than Megumi, and is very consistent, very stable. So for the 50 boss test, as you can read here, I spawned in groups of 10, with each group roughly 4 seconds apart. So kinda delayed their spawns enough to like space them out, you know, properly test the AoE coverage, and Judar very clearly won that one. So these were my tests with Judar and Megumi. I do think if we're going strictly off DPS, single target damage per second, it is clear to me that Megumi is still better. He just does higher DPS, you know, that's kind of undeniable. But then I definitely see why people think Judar is better than Megumi, because like, if you're only to place down one of the units, you know, when clearing content, Judar does better. Of course, in a team setting, Megumi has like way more supporting value with his domain, buffing stuff and rewinding stuff, and his stun. But clearly, one-on-one DPS comparison, Judar just kind of clears stuff faster than Megumi, or lasts longer in infinites, right? So recap of these findings were reflected in my tier list now. Judar is definitely in the top 5, especially after the Yuta nerfs, of course. And Megumi does still have better DPS than Judar for a single target. So Megumi is the #1 DPS unit, and in my opinion the #1 unit because he also has more supporting value. But of course Judar is still really good for having his damage distributed in different ways, you know, overall clearing stuff faster and having an easier time covering most maps. So I don't know, enough talking about this. Hopefully I wasn't too like redundant, or hopefully I just explained things properly. I don't know. These were my findings of like a few hours of testing these units, so hopefully these are kind of understandable on why I ranked things in the tier list where I did. I think that's all the information I have for now. Hopefully we can agree that the testing in this video has more concrete results than the testing in my last video. And look, overall, Dark Mage is really good. He's better than I was giving him credit for, but I still don't think he's top 1. I really don't understand how people are ranking him top 1, because he has no supporting value. And especially if you're a tournament player, I think a lot of people can understand the supporting value is really important in this game. Like, Megumi is pretty much on every tournament team. Inumaki also is. Kenpachi very oftentimes is, even for his 15% slow. So I don't know. I do think Judar is really good for DPS, probably the #2 DPS unit in the game. And hopefully you guys can understand my opinion of him not being top 1 a little bit better now. I am still really confused by the official tier list putting Itachi #4 overall. So in the next couple of videos I might have to kind of build up Itachi and investigate that, because I just don't think it's true. But either way, thank you to my channel members for making the video possible. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you in the next one. And have a great day.